you guys. So I am going to go through lesson 3 of module 16. This is actually the last lesson in this module, so it went pretty fast. So get your math books out and a pencil. I'm on page 429. So the title of this lesson is Recognize and Generate Equivalent Fractions. So the last 2 lessons we learned that different fractions can name the same area and the same space. And so now we're going to be able to recognize them on our own and write and come up with our own equivalent fractions. So the I can statement says, I can represent a fraction with equal parts that are smaller or larger in size than the equal parts of an equivalent fraction. So the with equal parts that are smaller or larger in size, that would be our denominator. And so if the equivalent fraction was larger in size, then the denominator would be smaller, right? Because there's less pieces in the whole. So yeah, I'm excited. So with this, with recognizing and generating equivalent fractions, we want to really have our multiplication facts nailed, right? Because we're noticing that fractions and multiplication have a lot in common, and it's just helpful when we recognize those patterns in numbers. It helps us just recognize equivalent fractions quicker. So just do your best. Let's go ahead and do the Spark Your Learning. It says, Megan wants to save some of the lasagna she makes for her cousin Jeremy. She divides the pan of lasagna into fourths and saves 2/4 of the pan for Jeremy. Can you think of 2 other ways Megan can divide the lasagna into equal-sized smaller or larger parts and still save the same amount for Jeremy? So basically what that question is asking for is for 2 equivalent fractions to 2/4. And then down below it says, show how to divide the lasagna for each pan. Shade the parts that Megan saves for Jeremy. Explain how you know that Jeremy will get the same amount of lasagna for each pan. So it has pictures. So these are our 3 pans of lasagna. She divided it into fourths and is saving 2/4 for Jeremy. So we need to find 2 equivalent fractions to 2/4. So now, right off the bat, I am looking at 2/4 and I'm noticing, 2 is half of 4. So Megan has saved half of the pan of lasagna. So what I need to do is come up with a fraction that is also half, 1/2. So I could do that very thing. I could just split it right in half like this. Split the pan of lasagna into 2 pieces, so then I have 1/2 saved. Okay, and I know that those are equivalent to each other because they're the same size of the pan is the same size, and 2/4 is the same space and area as 1/2 because 2 is half of 4. Then another one I could do, I need to think of numbers, half of another number. So like 3 out of 6, 3/6, or 4 out of 8, 5 out of 10. Those are all, the numerator is half of the denominator, and that's what I want. So I'm gonna keep it simple, and I'm gonna do maybe 8. So I'll go 1. Might be hard to fit 8 in there. I'll go like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So they're really, really tiny slices, and then I'm just gonna shade in 4 of them because 4 is half of 8. Ta-da! So then it says, explain how you know that Jeremy will get the same amount of lasagna for each pan. We already talked about how the pans are all the same size, so we're representing the same space, where the numerator is half of the denominator. And so half of the pan is saved for Jeremy every single time. It's always half of the pan. Half the pan, half the pan, half the pan, no matter how you divided it into 4 pieces, 2 pieces, or 8 pieces, it's still half the pan. Okay, feeling good? The next page, 430, it says, Rico's band eats pizza after band practice each week. On Friday, the band eats 6/8 of a cheese pizza. The next week, the band eats the same amount of a same-sized vegetable pizza cut into 4 equal pieces. What fraction of the vegetable pizza does the band eat? Show one way to solve the problem. So, part A says, how can you draw lines to divide the 2 pizzas? Into how many pieces will you divide each pizza? So the cheese pizza, I know, is going to have 8 equal slices because it says that they ate 6 out of the 8 equal slices. So I know that will be 6/8, and so then I would draw 4 lines. So I'm going to do a plus sign through the circle and then an X to cut it in half and make sure it goes through the center. So now I have 8 slices. So then over on part A, you would just write, I drew 4 lines to divide the cheese pizza into 8 slices. You'd write that down here. And then I'm going to shade in 6 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it'll look like that. And then the vegetable pizza is cut into 4 equal pieces. So I know that my denominator will be 4. So I'm going to draw 2 lines, and this is what you'll write for part A. I'll draw 2 lines to divide the vegetable pizza into 4 equal slices, like that. What fraction of the vegetable pizza does the band eat? Well, it says the next week the band eats the same amount of pizza cut into 4 equal pieces. So they ate the same amount as they did the cheese. So I need this circle to look like this circle. And so I'm going to color in this slice, and this one. See how I shaded in the same area? So now they look the same. The only difference is this one is divided into 4 pizza slices, and this one is divided into 8 equal slices. So I have 2/8 missing from the cheese pizza and 1/4 piece missing from the vegetable pizza. So part B says, how can you shade the pizzas to show how much the band eats? Well, we already did that. You would say the story problem tells us that the band eats 6/8 cheese slices, so I shaded in 6 out of the 8, and then the story problem says that the band eats the same amount of pizza on the vegetable one, but instead it's cut into 4 slices. So I just shaded in the same area so it looked the same, and those are going to be 3 slices. So that's what you'll write down here. Part C says, what fraction can you write for the amount of each pizza that the band eats? Label each pizza to show the fraction of each pizza the band eats. How do these fractions compare? So we already did that. We already wrote the fractions. So now we just have to say how they compare. Well, since it says the band eats the same amount, those fractions are the same. They're equivalent. So then it says write the fractions and write greater than, less than, or equal to. The band eats 3/4 of the vegetable pizza, so 6/8 is equal to 3/4. Just like that. All right. So the turn and talk says two fractions are equivalent. The first fraction has a greater denominator. What does that tell you about the numerator of the first fraction? Well, you'll notice with this example, with our fractions 6/8 and 3/4, the fraction with the greater denominator, the numerator was also greater than this equivalent fraction. So they increased the same. 4 is half of 8, 3 is half of 6. Or you could say 6 is 3 doubled, 8 is 4 doubled. So they increase at the same rate. All right, number 2, it says, Leah runs 3/2 of a mile. Roxy runs the same distance on a track laid out in 4/4 of a mile. How far does Roxy run? It says complete the number line. So the bottom of the number line, so our number line goes from 0/2 to 4/2. Now for 4/2, the numerator is greater than the denominator, which tells us it's more than 1. In this case, 4/2 equals 2 wholes. So 0/2, this is going to be 1/2 to 2/2, 3/2, and then 4/2. Then on top, where it's divided into fourths, we'll label each of those. 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4 is given, 5/4, 6/4, and 7/4. Locate and draw a point on the number line to show how far Leah and Roxy run. Write the equivalent fraction. So Leah runs 3/2 of a mile, so that's going to be this point right here. And we notice that the fraction at the same point right above is 6/4 of a mile. So 3/2 of a mile is the same as 6/4 of a mile. Those are equivalent fractions because they are on the same spot on a number line. The bottom is just divided into halves, the top is just divided into fourths. Okay, number 3 says, draw circles to show equal groups. Find equivalent fractions for the shaded area of the shapes. Write the fractions. So this first one is given to us. So it has 4 pieces shaded out of 8. So now I'm going to make my own groups. I'm going to do something like this and this. So now I have 2 groups and one of them is shaded. See that? Or for this one, I'm going to do this. Okay, so now I have 1, 2, 3, 4 groups, and 1, 2 of them are shaded. So those are all equivalent fractions. So cool, right? All right, this is where you'll do the check understanding and the on your own worksheet on your own. Pause the video, come back to the check understanding, and see if you got them all right. Okay. Here's the check understanding. It says circle equal groups to find an equivalent fraction for the shaded area. So again, we have our rectangle divided into 8ths and 2 of them are shaded. So now I'm just going to circle to make new groups. And so now I have 4 groups and only one of them is shaded. See how that works? Number 2 says draw a point on the number line to find an equivalent fraction. So on the bottom is labeled, the number line is labeled in thirds, and the top would be in sixths. So we're going to finish the number line on top 1/6, 2/6, 3 is given, 4/6, and 5/6. Then it says it gives me 2/3. So I'm going to find 2/3 on the number line and see what fraction is on that same dot. So I look above and it's 4/6. So 2/3 is equal to 4/6. Yay! Last page. On your own. Number 3 says, Robert eats 1/3 of a granola bar. Ken eats the same amount of his granola bar. Both granola bars are the same size. Ken divides his bar into 6. What fraction of a granola bar does Ken eat? Show how much Ken and Robert eat. Write an equivalent fraction. So Robert eats 1/3 of the granola bar. So I'm going to cut Robert's granola bar into thirds and shade in 1. Like that. Now I'm going to cut Ken's granola bar into 6 because it says Ken divides his bar into 6. So I'm going to do thirds again and then cut them in half to make 6 equal groups. Now I want to color in, excuse me. Okay, I'm going to color in the same space as Robert's bar. And so remember how I originally cut the granola bar into thirds and then I cut those thirds in half? So that third was this line here. So I'm going to color in these 2/6 and that's going to be the same amount as 1/3. So 1/3 is equal to 2/6. Number 4, locate and draw a point on the number line. Then write the equivalent fraction. So 4/3, I'm going to find that on the number line. Bam, there it is. And then on top, it shows the 6. So I'm going to count those. I'm going to start here, and it's 6/6, which means the next one would be 7, and the next one would be 8/6. So 4/3 is the same as 8/6. So with these 2 questions, I hope you are noticing a pattern, right? 3 to 6. 3 times 2 is 6. 1 to 2. 1 times 2 is 2. Over here, 3 to 6 and 4 to 8. 3 times 2, 6. 4 times 2, 8, right? They're changing, the numerator and the denominator are changing at the same rate, and that's what makes them equivalent. So number 5 says, shade to show an equivalent fraction on the visual model. Then write the equivalent fraction. So this one is divided into 6 equal parts. 3 of them are shaded. I know that 3 is half of 6, so half of this bar model is shaded. So it wants me to divide the next bar model into 2 equal parts, so that's what I'm going to do. And half of 2 is 1. So 3/6 is equal to 1/2. Yay! Okay, number 6, last question. A wheel and an axle turn together in the direction shown. One wheel has 4 spokes and makes 3/4 of a turn. The other wheel has 8 spokes. Shade to show how far the 8-spoke wheel turns. Write the equivalent fraction. Okay, so this one, it looks like, oh my gosh, what is even happening? But it's not as complicated as you think. See, so this wheel is turning this much. So I need to shade to show how far this wheel would turn the same amount, right? So I need to shade in the same amount. So that's what I'll do. Like that. See how the shading is the same? So now I know 1, 2, 3/4, that's the given fraction here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 eighths is the shaded area on the next wheel. So 3/4 is equal to 6/8. And that's it. So I hope that makes sense. I hope you enjoyed that. Good luck on your homework and let me know if you need anything. Love your guts. Bye.